Welcome to Trump Wire, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. For generations, Americans viewed Canada as a quiet, reliable neighbor, so familiar and unthreatening that it faded into the background of foreign policy discussions. The two countries shared not just a border, but a sense of ease and predictability, with most Americans rarely giving much thought to what happened north of the 49th parallel. The world's longest undefended border and deeply intertwined economies bred a sense of complacency in Washington. Trade, travel, and culture flowed so freely that the relationship seemed almost automatic, requiring little attention or concern from American leaders. But in 2025, that illusion was shattered in a matter of weeks. Suddenly, Canada was front-page news, and Americans were forced to confront a reality they had long ignored. The return of Donald Trump to the White House and his administration's provocative 51st state rhetoric was a catalyst. Yet, beneath the surface, Canadian frustration had been simmering for years, over trade disputes, digital privacy, and a sense of being taken for granted. Suddenly, Canada, under the leadership of new Prime Minister Mark Carney, drew unmistakable lines on trade, territory, and digital security. The government moved quickly, signaling a new era of assertiveness. The polite, deferential diplomacy of the past was replaced by direct, sometimes blunt, action. Canadian officials made it clear that their patience had run out. Headlines blared about retaliatory tariffs, Arctic military exercises, and a dramatic strategic pivot away from the US-Canada was no longer content to play a supporting role. For the first time in living memory, Americans had to listen as Canada asserted its own future, on its own terms. The shift was impossible to ignore. The shock was greatest among US political and economic elites, who had long assumed Canada would simply go along with American priorities. Suddenly, they found themselves scrambling to respond to a partner who was no longer predictable. The bold moves of 2025 were a wake-up call. Canada is not an extension of the United States, but a sovereign nation with its own interests, ambitions, and red lines. The world was watching, and so was America. The era of taking Canada for granted was over. A new chapter in North American relations had begun, and this time, Canada was writing its own story. In early 2025, the Trump administration reimposed harsh tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and lumber, reigniting a trade battle that many thought had been settled. The move sent shockwaves through both economies, as industries on both sides of the border braced for impact. For Canada, these tariffs threatened not just profits, but the livelihoods of thousands of workers and the stability of entire communities built around these industries. The stated goal was clear: to pull jobs south, boost American manufacturing, and appeal to domestic political supporters ahead of a contentious election year. But Canada, under Prime Minister Carney, refused to plead for exemptions or back down. Instead, the government responded swiftly, imposing targeted tariffs on US goods, especially those from politically sensitive states, making it clear that Canada would not be bullied. The message was unmistakable: economic conflict would be a two-way street, and Canada was prepared to defend its interests. This was a risky move for Canada, a country far more dependent on US trade than the reverse. Yet, it marked a dramatic shift, from years of accommodation to a new era of confrontation and self-assertion. The dispute quickly escalated. There were threats to abrogate the USMCA, the very trade agreement that had underpinned North American commerce, and new tariffs on trucks and other key goods. Instead of folding under pressure, Canadians rallied behind their government, showing a rare unity across political lines. The conflict quickly became about more than just dollars and cents. It was now a matter of national dignity, pride, and the right to stand up for oneself on the world stage. Supply chains were disrupted, uncertainty soared, and businesses faced tough choices. Yet the public largely supported the government's firm response, even as the costs became clear. The economic gauntlet thrown by the US became a catalyst for change, forcing Canada to innovate, invest in new industries, and rethink its economic future. Canada was forced to confront its deep dependency on its southern neighbor and begin forging a more independent path, seeking new partners and diversifying its trade. The pain was real, and the challenges immense, but so was the resolve to adapt and persevere. A new, tense reality had arrived, one that would test Canada's unity, ingenuity, and determination for years to come. Retaliation wasn't enough. Canada needed a new strategy. Prime Minister Carney launched a $20 billion national self-reliance fund to boost domestic industries and reduce U.S. dependence. The plan targeted advanced manufacturing, green tech, and pharmaceuticals, aiming for self-sufficiency. Canada prioritized trade missions to Europe and Asia, promoting agreements like CETA and CPTPP. Businesses were urged to look beyond the U.S., with government support for reshoring and new exports. The transition was tough. New markets meant new challenges. But the political will was strong. The vision transformed Canada from a resource exporter into a dynamic, globally integrated economy. Short-term pain was acknowledged, but the long-term goal was resilience and innovation. Canada was determined to control its economic destiny. The pivot was a bold declaration of independence. In the far north, a new front emerged, one defined not by land, but by the icy expanse of the Arctic Ocean. Here, Canada asserts that the Northwest Passage, a fabled sea route long sought by explorers, is part of its internal waters, a claim rooted in history, geography, and national pride. This position is directly challenged by the United States, which insists the passage is an international strait, open to all. Tensions escalated in 2025, when rumors swirled of a U.S. Navy operation in the region, raising the specter of a direct confrontation between allies. For Canada, the claim is more than legal, it's deeply tied to Inuit land rights and the stewardship of the people who have called the Arctic home for millennia. This foundation made the claim non-negotiable. Ottawa responded swiftly, warning that any unauthorized transit by U.S. warships would be met with a strong and immediate response, signaling the seriousness of the situation. Operation Nanook, Canada's annual Arctic military exercise, was rapidly expanded. Troops, equipment, and resources were mobilized to demonstrate that Canada was prepared to defend its sovereignty. Patrol ships and aircraft patrolled the frigid waters, sending a clear and unmistakable message to the world. Canada would defend its northern frontier, no matter the cost. The standoff quickly captured the attention of Canadians everywhere, becoming a test of national resolve and a powerful symbol of identity and unity. For many, defending the Arctic was about more than just territory or resources. It was about protecting a fragile environment and securing the future for generations to come. Ottawa's unwavering stance sent a clear signal to the international community. The Canadian Arctic is, and will remain, Canadian territory, vigilantly protected by those who call it home. The Northwest Passage dispute became a defining front in Canada's ongoing push for sovereignty. As the world watched, the stakes in the high Arctic had never been higher. In 2025, a Microsoft executive revealed that under the U.S. Cloud Act, American authorities could access data stored anywhere, even in Canada. This exposed a massive vulnerability. Canadian government and corporate data on U.S. cloud servers was not protected by Canadian law. The risk was acute for national security, with sensitive government files potentially accessible to a foreign power. Ottawa responded swiftly, mandating all sensitive federal data move to Canadian-owned, Canadian-based cloud providers. The government launched a push for sovereign cloud infrastructure, directly challenging U.S. tech dominance. Data sovereignty became central to Canada's independence movement. The message, just as borders must be defended, so must digital territory. Canada would not let its secrets be subject to foreign law. The government's bold moves were met with a surge of public support. Elbows up rallies swept the country, symbolizing polite but firm resistance. Canadians waved flags and demanded respect, backing Carney's assertive stance. Approval ratings soared as the public saw these actions as necessary and overdue. Media and commentators, once cautious, now celebrated Canada's new direction. Stories of businesses finding new markets and the military defending the Arctic fueled national pride. The public's engagement gave the government the mandate to take risks. This was not just policy, it was the will of the people. Canadians were ready to shed the quiet neighbor image. A more independent, assertive future had broad support. Canada's sovereignty push was a high-stakes gamble. Economists warned of short-term pain, Higher prices, disrupted supply chains, and slower growth. The risk of a trade war and diplomatic fallout with the US was real. Security cooperation, long anchored by NORAD, could be strained. The Arctic standoff risked further escalation, yet the government argued the rewards outweighed the risks. Diversifying the economy promised long-term resilience and innovation. The investment in domestic industry aimed to create jobs and self-sufficiency. Most importantly, it was about national identity and self-determination. The pain was the price for a future where Canada's destiny was its own. It was a bet on Canada's potential. The world took notice of Canada's bold stand. In Europe, leaders saw Canada as a partner in counterbalancing US influence and deepened economic ties. The EU welcomed Canada's pivot, supporting expanded cooperation on trade and regulation. In Asia, countries like Japan and South Korea saw opportunity, eager to strengthen trade links. Canada's promotion of the CPTPP opened doors across the Asia-Pacific. Not all reactions were positive. Russia and China watched for cracks in the Western alliance. But globally, Canada earned new respect as a sovereign actor. No longer a US appendage, Canada was seen as independent and credible. Its willingness to defend its interests inspired other middle powers. The world was watching and learning. Canada had stepped out of the shadows. 2025 marked a turning point. Canada's era of quiet deference ended. The US relationship was redefined, more complex, sometimes confrontational, but grounded in mutual respect. Trade disputes and Arctic standoffs left deep fractures, but also awakened a new sense of purpose. Canada's pivot to Europe and Asia opened new possibilities for growth and influence. Investments in technology and manufacturing laid the foundation for a resilient future. Defending sovereignty became a national mission, economic, territorial, and digital. Canada declared it would no longer live in its neighbor's shadow. The path forward would be its own, with a renewed sense of confidence and vision.